Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is CityTalk, the New York City economy, business, and jobs. Good news, bad news. The bad news first. High unemployment, high poverty, losing the middle class, a growing chasm in wealth. The good news, the city economy has grown, it's become more diversified, the waterfront has been rediscovered, and the city remains a potent magnet for international talent. To talk about all that news and more is Kathryn Wylde, President and CEO of the Partnership for New York City. The Partnership is a nonprofit organization of the city's business leaders, which was established by David Rockefeller in 1979. The Partnership is dedicated to working with government, labor, and the not-for-profit sectors to build a stronger New York. It focuses on education, infrastructure, and the economy. Kathy has been with the Partnership since 1982. She is the voice and face of business in New York. Welcome, Kathy.
Thanks, Doug.
So let's start with this New York Jobs Blueprint from really the intro of the show began. Talk a little bit about the background of the project and its intent and in fact, what it says.
Well, as we entered a new era, the end of the Bloomberg era for the last 12 years, and looking to a new mayor, we thought it was important, and this is before we knew who the mayor was going to be, we thought it was important to try and capture what the business community felt had been important and worked during the Bloomberg administration, and what the new challenges were and what was going to face the next mayor that we really needed to work on together. So we just wanted to lay out a blueprint for what we thought it was going to take to continue the momentum that has really been established in the past decade.
I mean, you had a friend in the West Wing of City Hall. I mean, business, developers, et cetera. The business communities as a whole had a friend.
Mike Bloomberg was the first businessman mayor in more than 100 years. And he is somebody that is a champion of entrepreneurship, of the global economy, of international business, of philanthropy. He's somebody that the business community universally held in very high regard. He spoke their language, so it was in fact great in terms of the business community's ability, number one, to lead us out of the crisis that 9/11 created. I mean, Mike coming in at that moment when the city was really threatened by international terrorism and there were real questions about what our future was. He came in and was the kind of person that could both understand the international context and really reassure business it was time to recommit, to move forward, that New York was going to remain great, and then, as you mentioned, diversify the economy and make New York not the old economy, but the center of the new economy, innovation, technology. He understood that, and that was his focus.
But as you recognize, and as the study recognized, there are problems as well and obstacles, problems now and obstacles that confront us in the future. Before we get into the specifics, though, let's talk a little bit about the Partnership for New York City. Exactly who are we? What is the Partnership?
The Partnership is a collection of the leaders, the CEOs of the city's largest businesses, major employers, many of its entrepreneurial companies, that was put together to really think about business, not as a chamber of commerce, but business working in the interests of the city. When people come to our meetings, they take off their company hat, their industry hat. They're not there as a trade association. They're really there to think about what business cares about, can help with, what are the resources of business available to help the city.
Okay. The perception out there, I think widely held, is that there is some kind of endemic conflict between the interests of business and the general welfare, that business is only interested in business. And I have to say I've shared that view on occasion. However, what you folks point out here is that there is real confluence of interest rather than confluence of interest between New York's business community and the various populations and communities. Talk about those things that you see that almost irrespective of administration, and we'll talk about current politics shortly, that the business community brings. What is it? What is the essence of collaboration looking forward?
Well, essentially, the business community is about keeping New York a great platform for job creation, for entrepreneurial activity, for investment. That means the city's safety and security is number one. Number two, its livability, both in terms of quality of life and also its affordability. We talk to employers, their biggest issue today is the lack of affordable housing.
Talk.
They can't find housing for employees. They're having to either pay people a huge amount or have them commute from far away where they can get affordable housing, and increasingly that's difficult throughout our region, or they have to relocate, particularly mid-level jobs, to other places. One of the things we found in the blueprint was over the last decade we've lost over 100,000 middle-income jobs from the city. We've grown jobs on the low end, we've grown jobs on the high end, but in the middle, we're hollowing out. And that's an increasing danger as the financial services industry in particular, which is a third of the payroll in New York City, comes out of financial services. And both their direct and indirect impact on the city remains tremendous. Now, we've got lots going on. The highest growth sectors are the tech and creative industries and tourism. But the foundation of our economy remains financial services.
Okay, now, given that fact, what is the recommendation to, and this was done last spring, to any mayor, future mayor of New York City, and now particularly the de Blasio administration, what is the business agenda vis-a-vis the new administration? What does business want from the new administration? And in a sense, what does the new what should the new administration be hearing?
Well, number one, I think that we all recognize that while the city as a whole did very well for the last decade, many individual New Yorkers did not. And Mayor de Blasio picked up a theme that business recognizes, not just in New York City, but around the country and the world, that a large number of people feel left behind by the global economy. We have not done a good enough job either preparing them skills-wise or providing for the support services they need to be part of the global economy and the new technology innovation economy. So I think we've got to start with the fact that business gets the message of the election and the campaign, that in fact there is a real frustration between people on one side of the equation, the 1% doing very well, the 99% or some large number of New Yorkers struggling. And that we understand, and so we think the message has to be today not just continuing the city's growth and prosperity of the city's large institutions, but the message has to be that New Yorkers have to be ready for the jobs that are created. We still have less than a third of our high school graduates being college or career ready.
Tell us, we run the community colleges, we see them.
80% need remediation when they come to community college. We still have not made the right kind of investments in preparing people for the jobs of today. Right now we have 73,000 open jobs in the city, and we've got 333,000 people who are unemployed, 44,000 who have given up looking for work.
And the rest of them looking for it.
Yep, exactly. So we have a situation where the business community recognizes, yes, we need jobs, but if the average New Yorker isn't prepared for those jobs, we're going to have a continuing social fracturing of our society.
What does business do? What's the nature of the involvement of business in this public policy arena to help solve the problem?
Well, we think, number one, the involvement should be that we have to shift to a demand-side approach. What are the jobs? What are the skills to our education, career and technical education, and workforce development activities? We tend to spend a lot of money on workforce development programs without being sure where people are going to end up.
Sure.
Are they being prepared for the jobs of tomorrow? The only way to solve that problem is if employers, particularly in the tech sector, but employers across the board, take the lead. The health sector too. Where are jobs growing? They're growing in health. They're growing in technology, some of the new manufacturing areas. You have to have employers at the table, not just to prepare the curriculum up front, but on an ongoing basis, because these industries are changing dramatically. Our financial industry is becoming a technology industry. Our fashion industry, even is with the mobile, is becoming a technology industry. You've got to bring employers to the table, and they have to drive the curriculum, the professional development, the job placement, the internships. And we think New York employers are ready to do that.
Okay. Is the government ready to do that? Is there a dialogue? Looking at the transition and the first month or so of the administration, it seems like business wasn't involved in, first of all, the campaign, the transition. Is it involved in discussion? Is there dialogue between business and the administration?
It's getting started. You're absolutely right. The business community was not particularly engaged, and when I say the business community, I'm distinguishing now.
Yeah.
The business community has many components.
It's not monolithic, and that's one of the mistakes that many of us
People
make.
yeah.
Talk about the differences within the business community, in fact, business communities. Go ahead.
Well, one is there is the corporate and Wall Street community, which is big business. And big business does, people think they people underestimate their importance in terms of not just as taxpayers, but as employers. 51% of the employees of the jobs in New York City are for companies with 500 or more employees. So big business is an important source of jobs, as well as taxpayers, as well as leading our position in the global economy. Then there is entrepreneurial business and small business. So those are sort of three classes, small being neighborhood business, entrepreneurial business being growth sector businesses in technology, the arts. Then there is the real estate community. That is a separate and apart. Those are the folks that build, develop, maintain the building physical infrastructure of the city. But most of the major employers, the other industries, are tenants as opposed to owners for the most part. Different interests.
So in some sense, the folks who make up the core partners of the partnership, they're really not as concerned with city policy in some ways as the real estate industry might, which has got a direct interest.
Real estate is regulated by the city, land use development, et cetera.
Right.
In most industries, it's the federal government. Their focus is Washington when it comes to politics.
Right.
And to a lesser extent, state government, which has some regulatory and tax and other authorities. But city government, the city council, the mayor, have never been really pre-Bloomberg. He was an anomaly. And it was because of who Bloomberg was and the fact that he was a leader in business and he had a global reach. And so he was a peer in that sense.
Right.
Otherwise, city government tends to be something of an afterthought for the city's international business community, because they are not their regulator on a regular basis and they don't have those relationships. Bloomberg engaged them with the life of the city in a way that I think we'd like to see keep going. Certainly I would, from the standpoint of the partnership, because it got them involved not just in city government per se, because they weren't that involved in city government, but it got them involved with was with the city's major institutions, its hospitals, its cultural institutions. It encouraged philanthropy. It encouraged support for the sciences. It made every CEO of an international company a marketing agent for New York City around the world, bringing talent here and bringing other companies and other investors and other jobs here. And as a result, our economy over the last 5 years has been growing at a rate significantly higher than the country, higher than any other domestic city, more than 3.5% a year. We have the highest number of jobs, private sector jobs in the city's history at 3.5 million. We've got 54 million tourists coming to the city. We've had some real successes by enlisting business as partners with the city.
We need, I mean, the argument that I'm hearing is that we need business to partner even more than it has in the past in the life of the city. If you're talking about educational reform, I mean, you talk about building tech sectors in the boroughs. If you are doing the variety of activities that you're talking about here, what I'm concerned about is the dialogue. I mean, who's talking and who's listening?
Well, the conversations are starting, and in fact, there are good
Are there
relationships.
folks in the administration who are both knowledgeable and sensitive to what we could call business needs, whether it's the partners
yes.
in the partnership?
No, absolutely. And certainly the administration has made clear that jobs are a big priority, and I think that that's our opening. Last week we had Police Commissioner Bill Bratton came and spoke to a number of the CEOs, and he gave a terrific presentation, very reassuring. He's absolutely somebody that they have great confidence in, and as I said before, the safety and security of the city is number one.
Good pick.
We're having, I've sat down with most of the deputy mayors and with the chancellor, and we are starting those conversations. So I'm very optimistic. I think that we'll have a strong partnership, and I do think because of the cutbacks in federal funding, which cascade down on the city, that is going to have an enormous impact on New York. And we're all going to have to work together on that issue in Washington as well as in Albany. As one set of issues that we have to worry about.
Also, Washington would be the focus of another major thrust that you folks have articulated over and over again, and that is the need for immigration reform.
Immigration reform is critical to the future of the city. One of the areas in which our economy has faltered a bit is that our population growth hasn't met expectations. We traditionally fuel our growth through immigration. A third of our small businesses are owned by immigrants. Immigration is foreign immigration, international immigration is what keeps the lifeblood of the city going.
On all kinds of levels, not only the small mom and pop entrepreneurial, but the tech sector and the engineers and everybody else.
Exactly. And so immigration reform is a top priority. It's been incredibly disappointing not to see more happen on that front. We've got to keep fighting, and hopefully this year, 2014, could be the year, although it hasn't looked great in the last week. But it's one that the business community, the city, it's a totally shared interest. The universities, we all have to keep that front of mind.
Another study that I found very interesting is your New York City as a destination of choice for talent. I mean, we are still this tremendous magnet. But as you point out here, and at least alluded to earlier, there are real obstacles to the city maintaining this preeminence as a destination. What are those obstacles, and how do we deal with them? Well,
as we were just talking about, obviously, global talent requires decent immigration laws and an open immigration policy, but equally important, affordability of housing, the ability to get housing, and so I think the priority that Mayor de Blasio has placed on the expansion of affordable housing has to be all of our priority, very important to the business community.
What about another element is the arterial system, meaning mass transit. Clearly there are entire areas of the city that are underserved and populated that provide a tremendous opportunity. Is there statewide or citywide or joint city-state regional plans to develop mass transit into these areas?
Yes, absolutely. In terms of the new centers of employment in particular, there is bus rapid transit that can be accelerated and expanded. The mayor has indicated that's something he wants to do. He's appointed a terrific transportation commissioner in Polly Trottenberg, who will be here shortly, and who is somebody that will be very helpful because of her background in Washington,
right,
in helping to keep Washington going in that direction. So yes, transportation and supporting more creative transportation alternatives is a top priority.
Looking at the mayor's agenda and perhaps the city council agenda, what do you see as the chief confluences and conflicts that might arise over the next several months, particularly in terms of budget?
Well, as I told some members of the city council, I said my first lesson would be do no harm, as the physicians say.
Yes.
First, do no harm. We're hoping that particularly the entrepreneurial neighborhood business sector can get more involved. They really haven't had as much activity with the city council, and I think that you've got to start with understanding with the city council, everybody has a district.
Yep.
Their district has local neighborhood merchants, associations of business, and we think they have to have a much stronger role in thinking about policy issues. Often it's kind of parochial, my business, my pothole, my whatever, to get them more involved in policy. So we've created a network of business communication with the chambers of commerce and with local business associations, ethnic and otherwise, local business leaders called Go Biz. Got a website, and we're trying to engage them more. We're also reaching out to the entrepreneurial tech community, media, tech, professional services, creative, that are building businesses, the growth sector. This isn't the corporations,
right,
this isn't Wall Street. These are the folks that are really in the high growth sectors. They're the ones that are going to create the jobs of the future. And we want to get them more involved. They have not been involved in policy and politics in the city. And I think that as that happens, the stereotype of big business somehow being, the 800-pound gorilla.
And a bad 800-pound
and a bad 800-pound gorilla. I think that stereotype will hopefully change, and we'll find ways in workforce development and in education and in building local community economies. We'll find ways of working together in a way that communicates that this is in fact one city, as the mayor likes to say, and it's one that we can all pull together, and the business community wants to be part of that process. Clearly, there are concerns about the tax and regulatory environment.
Yep.
And there is, I think, a lack of sensitivity on the part of people that there's a threshold beyond which people cannot afford to be in New York on a tax and regulatory basis. I think that in some areas we've crossed that threshold. We haven't had...
Specifically?
I think income taxes at this point, we in California have, in New York City, have the highest personal income taxes in the country.
What about that incremental tax on folks making $500,000 or more to go for universal pre-K?
By itself, the incremental 0.5% tax is not a lot, but you're talking about people that are currently paying 54% of their income in federal, state, and city taxes. If they move to London, it's 45%. London reduced their taxes, recognizing that top talent, the job creators, the people, entrepreneurs that are starting new companies, were not going to be attracted if you were taking more than 50% of their earnings.
So one of the lessons clearly in this report and a larger agenda is the recognition that our position as global capital is constantly under assault by other jurisdictions, and that there are all kinds of mechanisms that we have to involve ourselves in to keep ourselves up front, and then housing, education, public safety, etc. If you had one policy recommendation specifically to the administration and the city council, what would that be in specifics? What do you see as the #1 item that must be addressed immediately?
Well, obviously, the fiscal situation of the city, the challenge of we've got a growing debt service burden that is going to eat up much of our budget. We have the settlements with the
Municipal
unions,
300,000 workers.
which is 300,000 workers and almost an equal number of retirees,
Right.
which is a huge nut that is going to really limit our options for what we invest in affordable housing and in education and these other areas. So I would say the number one issue is to come together as a city, labor, business, the government, not-for-profit sector, and figure out, so what are our priorities and how are we going to solve this fiscal challenge? It shouldn't be the mayor's problem by himself. It really is a coming up with a set of values that everybody participates in, and recognizing that part of that conversation may be new revenues. That's got to be on the table as well, but we've got to talk about it together.
Do I hear, wait a second, taxes? Do I hear taxes?
Well, there's tolls, there's taxes.
There's fees.
We supported congestion pricing.
Yes.
There are many ways to skin the cat, but the point is that I think that people should know the business community in this city is not a retrograde, laissez-faire community. It is a community that is a leader in many respects and will be willing to come to the table to talk about how the city manages to stay great, to manage its fiscal challenges, to encompass upward mobility for all its residents. All those are opportunities that we want to pursue.
I agree, but the question becomes, where is the forum? Who puts this conversation together? I mean, is it the universities? I mean, where is the locus of meeting? Where do we meet?
Well, I think we've got a brand new administration, and so we've got to give them the opportunity to answer that question, because I think we will definitely need leadership from the mayor and his people to put this together. And I'm confident that that will happen. And then I think obviously the universities have to be at the table, because without the partnership of the universities, we're not going anywhere in the innovation economy and in preparing people for the jobs, et cetera. So I think everybody has a part to play. What we tried to do in the Jobs Blueprint was point that out, that business is prepared to be at the table, to provide resources, to provide expertise, to be partners in answering those questions. We don't want to be relegated to the 1%, we don't want to be part of history. We want to be part of the future.
Ooh, good. Well, we'll end right there. That's excellent. Thanks to Kathryn Wylde for being on the show and for her insights into New York's economic and business issues. Join me next week when we will talk about radio on television with Mark Riley, formerly of WWRL on CUNY TV. Thank you. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.